Long before the ink of history had dried, in a land cradled between restless seas and mountains veined with silver, there rose a kingdom known as Aramor. Its fields shimmered with golden wheat, its harbors thrummed with sails, and its scholars filled halls with knowledge. At its heart stood Queen Elira, whose reign began not in triumph, but in ashes. She had ascended the throne after the Great Cinder War, a conflict that had consumed her parents and half the nobility. Aramor survived, but barely, its walls cracked, its people weary, its treasury hollow. Many expected Elira, young and untested, to serve as little more than a placeholder until stronger hands seized the crown. Yet those who looked into her eyes found steel softened by compassion. She bore herself with calm, listening more than she spoke, and when she did speak her words carried the weight of thought, not impulse. The realm needed more than decrees. Famine lingered, bandits prowled broken roads, neighboring lords sniffed weakness. In those days, Elira would walk among her people disguised in simple robes, carrying baskets of bread or buckets of water, listening to their woes. She watched children scraping games in dust, heard mothers singing lullabies strained with hunger, and felt the ache of those who had buried too much. These journeys, dangerous as they were, hardened her resolve. A crown, she realized, was not an ornament of gold but a burden of trust. One evening as she crossed the market square, she noticed a commotion. A group of mercenaries, remnants of the war, were harassing a girl who sold clay pots. Before Elira could intervene, the girl's brother, barely more than a boy, threw a stone that struck a mercenary's helm. Swords hissed from scabbards. Elira stepped forward, placing herself between steel and child. With nothing but calm, she said, "If you thirst for coin, I will pay. But if you thirst for blood, then strike me, for I will not step aside." The mercenaries faltered. Something in her stance unsettled them, an authority not of armor but of presence. They muttered curses and withdrew. The boy and girl stared at her in awe. Later that night, whispers spread across Aramor. The queen had stood unarmed against blades for her people. In troubled times, symbols carried power, and Elira had become one. Yet the kingdom's challenges were not solved by symbols alone. Reports came of raiders at the coast, and worse, of a darkness stirring in the ancient forest of Dareth. Travelers spoke of lights flickering among the trees, of voices calling their names, of men vanishing into the shadows without trace. The council urged her to ignore such tales, to focus on rebuilding walls and taxes. But Elira remembered the war had begun with whispers dismissed as fables. She resolved to see for herself. Accompanied by her guard captain, a weathered veteran named Roran, she rode to Dareth. The forest stood vast and silent, its branches heavy with moss, its air cool though no wind stirred. At dusk they found a clearing where once had stood a watchtower, now toppled into ruin. As night fell, Elira heard it, faint murmurs, like threads of song woven through the leaves. Roran heard nothing, yet his torch sputtered as if smothered. The queen walked forward, compelled, until her hand brushed a stone carved with runes too ancient for memory. The murmurs sharpened into words. "Elira of Aramor," the forest breathed, "you carry the wound of your people. Do you seek healing or dominion?" She steadied herself. "I seek to mend, not to rule by fear." From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in green and silver, neither holy man nor spirit, eyes bright as moonlit pools. He named himself Thalin, warden of Dareth. The forest, he explained, remembered wounds of war as keenly as men. The dead had seeped into its roots, hungering, restless. Unless soothed, their whispers would spread, turning soil barren and rivers bitter. "How do we soothe them?" Elira asked. "By giving them balance," Thalin said. "But balance cannot be purchased with steel. It must be chosen. You must walk the path of echoes, where your heart is measured against temptation." Roran protested, but Elira agreed. That night Thalin guided her into the forest depths. The air grew heavy, branches arching like cathedral vaults. Soon she stood before a pool so still it mirrored stars perfectly. Thalen touched the surface, and ripples opened into a passage. On the other side lay not forest, but a hall of light and shadow, its walls lined with mirrors that reflected not her form, but her possibilities. In one, she saw herself ruling as conqueror, banners of Aramor flying over foreign lands. In another, she was a hermit, abandoning crown and people to wander alone. In another, she was worshipped as a goddess, her face carved into stone by generations. Each reflection whispered promises. A voice, vast and patient, filled the hall. Break the glass to choose your path, but know that what you shatter becomes truth. Elira's hand trembled near the mirror of conquest, for she remembered the ease of commanding armies. She lingered before the mirror of solitude, longing for freedom from duty. But then she saw one reflection she had nearly overlooked, herself walking among children in the market, her crown plain, her robe dusted with flour. No armies, no temples, no solitude, just a queen who listened. She whispered, "A ruler is not above her people, but among them." The hall brightened. The other mirrors dimmed, leaving only that single reflection, which stepped forward and merged with her. The glass dissolved, and she stood once more in the glade. Thalen inclined his head. "You have chosen balance. The forest will heed you." From that night the whispers in Dareth softened. Crops near its edge flourished again, and travelers reported feeling watched not by malice, but by quiet guardianship. Word spread quickly, for rumors in Aramor traveled swifter than any rider. Their queen had entered the haunted wood and returned with peace. But peace is never still. Aramor's neighbors grew uneasy at its recovery. The dominion of Corvin, a power-hungry realm to the east, sent envoys cloaked in courtesy, but heavy with threat. They demanded grain tribute and rights to build garrisons along Aramor's border. The council urged compliance. The army was still weak. Yet Elira remembered the forest's lesson. Yielding to fear would unbalance all. She invited the envoys to a feast. In the great hall, she welcomed them warmly, serving Aramor's finest bread and wine. Then she stood and spoke with clarity. "Aramor bows to no master but justice. We trade willingly, but we do not submit. If you seek partnership, we offer friendship. If you seek chains, you will find them broken." Her words carried across the chamber like iron wrapped in silk. The envoys left unsettled. Days later, spies reported that Corvin's armies mustered, yet storms broke their marches, and harvest blight struck their fields. Many whispered the forest itself shielded Aramor now. Its whispers turned guardian rather than curse. Years passed. Under Elira's reign, canals carried water to parched lands, schools opened where once only nobles learned, and disputes were judged beneath an oak planted from the forest's seed. The people called it the Tree of Balance. Its leaves chimed softly whenever fairness tempered law. Yet Elira did not forget temptation. Sometimes in dreams she glimpsed the mirrors again, especially the one where she was adored as divine. It would be so easy, she knew, to let people worship her instead of serving them. But each dawn she walked among her people, muddying her boots, reminding herself she was mortal, and that was enough. In her later years, when silver threaded her hair, Elira summoned her daughter Ceres to the garden. The queen rested her hand on the oak's trunk and said, "A crown is weight, not glory. Remember the forest's lesson. Strength without kindness is ruin. Kindness without strength is drift. Balance is the only path." Ceres nodded, solemn beyond her years. That night, as the moon rose, Elira glimpsed a figure at the garden's edge, a fox with eyes like starlight, tail tipped with flame, watching silently. Peace filled her, for she knew the guardians still lingered. She passed quietly in her sleep, not as a monarch fading, but as a flame returned to the hearth. Under Queen Ceres, Aramor blossomed further. Pilgrims came from far lands to sit beneath the Tree of Balance, listening for its chiming leaves. Merchants traded not under threat but trust, and scholars recorded the tale of Elira's choice in the Hall of Mirrors, teaching it as law, that a queen's greatest strength was not command, but the courage to choose balance when power and fear tempted her otherwise. And so the story lived on, not of a conqueror or a goddess, but of a queen who walked among her people, listened to the whispers of forest and heart alike, and found harmony where others sought dominion. In the quiet rustle of leaves and in the laughter of children chasing sunlight across the square, her legacy endured.